What's up guys, Metro here with another guide for you, and today we're going to be examining the talent options for the Blood Death Knight specialization in this continuation of the Blood Death Knight topic guides we've been making. As always, these topics are direct replies to frequently asked questions by you, the viewer, so feel free to leave a comment on which other topics you'd like to see me cover in the future. Before we begin, I'll offer a too long didn't watch for those simply wondering which talents I use for Mythic Plus. Unfortunately, you've asked at a bad time, because the short answer is there is very little variation to talents for Blood Death Knights. So the one you see on the screen are simply the staple ones that I will use no matter what. There are a lot of things to discuss about each talent though, so let's take some time to examine each row. We'll discuss the things that can be useful now, why I'll use them, and we could also discuss the things that aren't useful and how they could be better with some slight adjustments. So let's get right into it. I actually made the joke on last Wednesday's stream that I might actually consider doing some challenge runs where I take the wrong talents, an entirely wrong set of talents for Blood DK, and just see how it plays. Because some of these talents are some of the best talents for any spec or class or tank or anything in WoW, and some of them are the worst. It's really unbelievable. So I think with some of these talents, like taking the wrong talents as Blood, I think it might be one of the worst tanks in the game. So anyway, we'll start with the 56 row. Don't forget, Blood DK starts at 56, so you get a lot of these talents before you even hit 60, but it takes, you start at 56. So anyway, Bloodworms. Your auto attack crits have a chance to summon a Bloodworm, and Bloodworms deal minor damage to your targets. That's no exaggeration. And then Burst, healing you for 15% of your missing health. If you drop below 50% health, your Bloodworms will immediately burst and heal you. So why this talent sucks is because falling below 50% health usually means you're going to just heal yourself to full next global, right? Like if you get hit from 100%, 50% health, that means the Death Strike is going to heal you 50% of your health. You don't need the Bloodworms to do that. It's useless. Does not help you. It's kind of interesting when they heal you passively for 15% of your missing health. That's a lot, especially if you have Vamp Blood up. Heals for a lot, but it's very inconsistent. Has to be based off an auto attack crit, and they do no fucking damage, guys. If they did more damage, this is how I'd fix it. Make them do more damage. If it was competitive with Blood Drinker, then it wouldn't really matter how much you actually like healed from them. Like it wouldn't even matter, because it's mostly overhealing is the point I'm trying to make. Mostly overhealing, but it wouldn't matter if they actually did real damage. So that's a big problem. That's the worst option on this tier. Second worst option, second best option, depending on who you are. Heart Strike generates 2 additional runic power per target. Now, I think it used to be like 5 or 6. It got nerfed. Let's put it that way. It used to be real good. It's still okay. It's still really good for any AoE situation where you have Dancing Rune Weapon up, because, of course, you already get extra runic power when you have Dancing Rune Weapon up anyway from Heart Strike. So like if you're fighting like 4 targets or 4 or 5 targets with this, it's just gonna be one Heart Strike and you're ready to rock, man. You got 100 runic power, So it's interesting, but it got nerfed to the ground, and unfortunately, Blood Drinker is simply too strong. It's just way overpowered. Only 30-second CD, regularly critting for like multiple millions, you know what I mean? Like it's going to do 2.2 million over 2.3 seconds. It's going to tick 4 times. It does use a rune. It was hard for me to get used to that in the first place, but now that I use it, it's pretty much, there's just no options here. You got to take it. You can move, parry, dodge, and use defensive abilities while channeling this ability. It's nice to be able to move. Parry and dodge, you don't really notice anyway, but it is good to be able to move. The problem is defensive abilities, they're being very generous. There's very few things you can use. There's a list out there online. I think you can use Vamp Blood and AMS, but you can't taunt, you can't grip, you can't use any offense. So you really got to be careful, because it, like I said, it ticks 4 times. The more haste you have, the quicker it's going to channel, which is very good. 2.3 seconds, I guess, is probably like 2.5. Maybe it's even 3 seconds. I don't know. Without any haste on whatsoever. I have to check it out on that 60 Death Knight I have. But regardless, it's definitely affected by haste, and it's definitely affected by versatility. So if you can get like a big verse proc from Agrimar's Conviction plus Concordance, of course, that's the name of it, Concordance, you are going to do a lot of damage with this ability. And if you have high haste, it's going to do it very quickly. So yeah, it's just too good of a talent. It's among your best single target burst DPS things in the game, and it's a talent, so you got to take it. 57 tier is another one with similar situation. We'll come back to this one. Hard Device. Now this was added. I can't actually remember what was removed, but Hard Device was added, I believe, in 7.2, and a lot of people were big on it because Death Strike extends the duration of Icebound forward 2 by 2 seconds. This is an interesting idea. And Icebound was something that wasn't in the beginning either. So people were like, yeah, this is going to be really good defensively. Unfortunately, you don't actually need defense from Icebound forward 2 as a Blood DK. It would be good if it was for Vamp Blood. That would be very interesting if it was actually extending Vamp Blood. But it extends Icebound, which is pretty shitty. And there was a trinket from, I think it was probably Kill Jaden, that made something Icebound related anyway. And people were like, oh, if you take this and this and this and all the stars align and you're David Beckham, you're literally going to have Icebound fortitude up for 80% of the fight. You know, all this stuff. Worst talent on this tier by far. You're never going to get use out of it, especially in 5-mans. Don't even bother with it. Now, Spectral Deflection, on the other hand, second worst, interesting talent. Attack that deal 25% of your maximum health will consume an additional bone shield. Now, why this is important is because the new 2 set from the raid from T21, every time you consume a bone shield stack, you actually gain time off Dancing Rune Weapon, which is very important for Blood DK. So, if you can get this to proc, it might actually be a DPS increase over rapid decomposition. I've never tried it. And I don't really do 5-mans frequently enough that it would definitely do more than 25% of your maximum health regularly. I would probably need like a week or to track this, but if you can get it, I would give it a try. I would give it a try. Now, some people recommended me use it for Maw, like we did Maw 20 or something the other day, Tyrannical. I thought it was going to be harder than it was. People were saying, oh, you should take this, you should take this. It's going to be way better. You're going to reduce, you know, it's, what was it, like a 16% reduction each time you get hit by Bone Shield. So it's, you know, it's going to do a lot more. It's going to reduce it by like 40%, which is obviously very nice. So, you know, in that situation, it's not bad at all, right? But unfortunately, rapid decomposition is just so good. It's just the same thing as Blood Drinker. It's just so good, it's hard not to use. Your Death and Decay dealing damage 15% more often is just insane. That is a really powerful effect. And you also, even if it was just that, it would probably still be better in Spectral Deflection. With the 2 set, right? So without the 2 set, it's terrible. And while in your Death and Decay, you generate 1 runic power every 1 second. This is overpowered. Honestly, I have to say it. It's just way too strong. It's probably one of the best talents in the game for AoE situations. You're just passively gaining runic power. You also get runic power when you drop Death and Decay because of how it works. And then, of course, you're doing more damage with Death and Decay, which is absolutely ridiculous. This talent plus the combination that we talked about in the legendary video, I think would be very, very, very strong. 58 tier, pretty much the exact same thing. We have Blood Tap. I don't even know which one of these is worse, to be honest. This one's probably worse. This is probably the worst one. Anti-Magic Shell also increases your maximum health by 25% for 10 seconds. No thanks. Like, why would you? I don't know why you would want that. Unless you're in a fight where you literally never take magic damage. Anti-Magic Shell is like the best ability in the game. I say this all the time. If Blood DKs, if like monks had Anti-Magic Shell and we just had like a magic like damage reduction, Barrier would be overpowered on any tank it has, and it would make them one of the top tanks because you could actually immune abilities with it. It's ridiculous. It's so overpowered. So I would not recommend using it just for a health increase. I don't know. I'm not really sure where this would ever be useful. But I think this is like a noob bait. This is another one of those ones that it's like, hey, I just started playing Blood DK. This one seems pretty cool. I get to get more health. I would not recommend using this, okay, under any circumstances. If you guys want to tell me why you would, let me know. But Blood Tap. Now, this one's interesting. Yet another ability that made Blood Death Knight very overpowered in WoD. If you've watched the channel for a long time, you've heard me talk about this. Blood Tap and Rune Tap were very, very, very overpowered in Warlords of Draenor. Now they've been considerably nerfed and been relegated to talents. What a surprise. But anyway, it's basic. I would actually consider using this. I definitely, if I ever do this thing where I take the wrong talents, I'm going to try Blood Tap because it's only a 1-minute recharge and it has 2 charges. And it actually, like, especially now how Bone Shield being consumed is a good thing anyway. I don't know. It's just quite interesting. It's really a really interesting talent because it's generating a rune. I don't know. See, it would be better if it... The reason it was so good in WoD was because you used runes for Blood Boil. You no longer use runes for Blood Boil. So you would basically There was another ability called Plague Leech. You would use your 2 runes on Blood Boil, Blood Tap once or twice or whatever it was, you Blood Boil again, and then Plague Leech your diseases off, get another rune, and Blood Boil again. So you'd Blood Boil 4 times in a row. And with Dancing Rune Weapon up, Blood Boiling 4 times in a row means you were the top DPS. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And that's why Blood DK was such strong DPS in WoD. So obviously they've nerfed the fucking life out of that by moving Blood Tap to a talent and getting rid of Plague Leech. But regardless, it doesn't affect Blood Boil anymore. So I don't know if it would actually be any good. I don't know. I've never tried it. It looks terrible on paper, but I think in application it might be all right. Now this, of course, the reason I was saying that the other ones are bad is because of this. Once again, absolutely insane. While you have at least 5 Bone Shield charges, the cost of Death Strike is reduced by 5. Additionally, you have 5% or 10, not 5%, 10 more maximum runic power. That part's not huge, but yes, you don't understand how important that 5 runic power can be. It's another reason why the bracers are even on the table at this point in the expansion. The legendary bracers do a similar thing. Basically, any time you could save runic power on Death Strike, it's just a big DPS increase because of the way you're going to gain runic power thanks to rapid decomposition. You know, you drop that ability, you're going to have that 5 runic power refunded be very important. So yeah, this is a really good talent. You should always try to be over 5. It can be difficult, especially if you don't have high haste and in AoE situations, but thanks to the T21 2 set, Dancing Rune Weapon up all the time, pretty much up like every minute and a half at least. Yeah, you're going to have more than 5 stacks constantly. It's difficult to keep on some situations. It's difficult when soloing especially, but regardless, this is a very good talent, okay? And we're not getting any different here with the 60 talent tree. This is, I'm going to have to say this right now, Red Thirst is the best talent in the video game. I don't know of an ability that is better than Red Thirst. And the reason Red Thirst is so good, first of all, is because we scale so well with haste. Mind you, Red Thirst was actually nerfed considerably in the beginning of the expansion, and it's still this good. Spending runic power will decrease the remaining cooldown of Vamp Blood by 1 second per 6 runic power spent. So I think it used to be like, I think it was like 6, maybe like 5 seconds per 10 in the past. So 1 per 6 is definitely a lot worse. I can't remember what it was, but it was definitely different, and it was really overpowered then. And that was with low haste. So now with high haste, it's basically the same thing as it was then. It's really not any different now. I'm getting Vamp Bloods, you know, it's typically a 1.5 minute CD. I'm getting it down to about 45 seconds thanks to haste. And this gets even better with certain legendaries, certain combinations of gear, gets even better. So this is easily the best talent in the entire tree, and I think it's probably the best talent in the entire game. If definitely not for Blood, probably for all tanks. I don't know. I don't see how there's, because it's the reason Blood is so good, right? Umbilicus and Vamp Blood are our mitigation. Without them, we have nothing. So the fact that we can use them twice as often thanks to this talent is just, no, it's just too much. So if you wanted to nerf Blood, I don't want them to nerf Blood, but if they wanted to, all they had to do was get rid of this talent, and that would be that. Anyway, Mark of Blood places a Mark of Blood on an enemy for 25 seconds. The enemy's damaging auto attacks will heal their victims for 3% of their victims' maximum health. Such a weird talent. I just don't know. It's interesting, though, because I think it used to have a CD, but now it doesn't. It's just 30 runic power. If I was going to do, like I said, the thing where I take the wrong talents, I would probably try this one. It seems interesting. I've never really used it. I think I used it in the beta. It's got a cool little icon there. I think it's like an icon from Wrath or something like that. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't think it's very good, though, man. 3% of the victim's maximum health. It's just not very good, man. It's a very low amount of healing. I don't know. It might be interesting. I've never really used it. Tombstone, of course, consumes up to 5 bone shield. You don't ever want to do that. You don't ever want to do that. Consumes up to 5 bone shield charges. For each charge consumed, you gain 6 runic power. And absorb damage equal to 6. Oh, you don't want to do that, guys. You just don't want to do this. You just don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. With Ossuary, you don't want to do this. I promise you. Especially with the new tier set, you don't want to use this talent. This talent is actually a lot. Like, you'll actually get weaker by using this ability, if you ask me. Because for 8 seconds, so it's basically just giving you another Umbilicus every minute. But you're going to have Umbilicus every minute. So it's like, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? I just don't know. I just don't know why you would ever use this. I think it's probably the worst. Compared to Red Thirst, it's probably the worst talent in all tank trees, which is kind of funny. It's literally, you're less survival. You have less survival when you use this, because now after you do this, you now need to regenerate those 5 bone shield charges, especially if you're using ossuary. You can't afford that. So like, you don't just, you don't use 5 bone shield charges willy-nilly and be happy about that. I can understand you could use it with Dancing Rune Weapon. It might be decent. But when you have Dancing Rune Weapon up, you're going to have Vamp Blood up. So it's like, what are we going to have, like a 90 million absorb on us? Like, it's going to get a bit superfluous. You don't really need a 90 million absorb on us. So I don't know. I can't see why you'd ever take it. Now, 75 treat, actually competitive. All 3 of these are quite good. This is really just like this is the one that you should just prefer which one to use. But I'm going to make a very strong case for March of the Damned. Before we do that, we'll talk about the other ones. Tremble Before Me is definitely the worst one in this, but it's actually still quite good. Enemy damaged by your Death and Decay have a chance to cower in place for 3 seconds, but cannot suffer this. Damage may cancel the effect. So it's very, very narrow-minded. Whoever came up with this it's interesting, but it's not very strong in 90% of the situations out there in the game. But there are times where you can actually interrupt key things in, like, say, a high fortified week. Interrupting key abilities with this can actually be very useful. So this is not terrible. This is actually really good for soloing. Anytime when you're going to solo trash, it's going to give you a lot of problems, especially a lot of casters. You may need this. I use this a lot for Darkheart Thicket soloing because there's a lot of casters, a lot of things that can actually wipe you if the casts get off, and this can help. This and the trinket we talked about in the last video, these things can actually help you quite a lot. So it's not bad, and it'll proc Cephas, so that's kind of cool. But you shouldn't really have any trouble proccing Cephas. Now we have Tightening Grasp, which is kind of harkening back to the WOD challenge mode days yet again. It reduces the cooldown of Gorfiend's Grasp by 30 seconds. Don't forget, it is a 2-minute CD. So that, unfortunately, this got nerfed too. It used to be 1 minute, but I think Gorfiend's Grasp used to be 3 minutes. So it's actually kind of better, but the talent itself got nerfed. So anyway, 30-second CD reduction takes it to 1.5 minutes. Not the best. But the Death and Decay also reduces movement speed by 70%. That is a substantial slow. So if I wasn't so set in my ways, I would say this is probably one of the best talents you could use for Skittish. Because if ranged are going to pull, and the mobs are 70% slowed, and they're standing in your Death and Decay, you're doing threat, pretty good, man. I think this is probably pretty good. Like, if threat was ever a real thing in 5-mans, this would probably be the best thing. Like, if all Skittish, if Skittish was every week, this would probably be undisputably the best. The reduction on Gorfiend's Grasp has niche usage. I don't really use Gorfiend's Grasp to the level that I probably could. Like I said, in WOD CMs, it was like some packs that required it. And I think regular Death Grip does the job well enough when you're not pulling like 30 mobs constantly. But maybe if I was doing like plus 90s, then I would need more Gorfiend's Grasps. But yeah, I don't think so. So the reason I take March of the Damned is because it does 2 things extremely, extremely well. All right. If there's one problem with Blood DK, it's mobility. Definitely. That's the biggest. Like, they are 0 out of 10 in mobility. They're terrible at it. So Wraithwalk lasting longer. Like, take this talent and then get rid of it, and you'll notice the difference. Let's put it that way. It's hard to go back to non-March of the Damned Wraithwalk. Lasting 100% longer is huge, and it really, really adds up in 5-mans. I'm telling you, I've seen people say otherwise. Tightening Grasp is better. They like it. But I'm telling you, man, once you get used to moving fast like this, people are like, oh, you can just make a speed set. You can, but I don't know, man. I don't think you're going to go back. I don't think you're going to get better than Wraithwalk here on this talent tree. And more importantly, it breaks stun, snare, and roots. This is really useful. I don't think a lot of people understand how useful this is. There's a lot of times, first of all, the group will make a mistake that will get you stunned. But there's actually a lot of times where breaking a stun can be a huge, not only a DPS increase, but can actually save a wipe. So obviously, there's other ways to break stuns. So it's not the best argument, right? Like, if you AMS something prior that can stun you, it won't stun you. If you use Icebound Fortitude, it will break the stun as well. But I'm telling you, March of the Damned, I take it all the time. But it doesn't matter. You can take any of these 3 and they'll be fine. But my opinion, March of the Damned is the best one. And then we're back to the normalcy here with 90. Let's just start with Will and Acropolis, I suppose. This is just another really useful talent. Or useless, I'm sorry, useless talent. Damage taken below 35% health is reduced by 35%. Now, old Metro would have said you should never be below 35% health. That was before I did Serious Mythic Plus. Obviously, you're going to be below 35% somewhat regularly if you're doing challenging Mythic Plus. It's not uncommon as Blood DK, but we're meant to heal it up immediately, right? So you should not be staying below 30. It's kind of pointless. I don't know exactly how it works. Like if I got hit from 100% to 20%, would it count? Because if it did, it would probably be pretty good. But we have enough damage reductions as it is. People think Blood DK doesn't have good damage reductions. They have plenty. And if you're going to compare that to Rune Tap, which is on the same talent tree, this is just useless. I mean, it's a 35% reduction while between 35% health and lower. And this is a 40% reduction. And you don't have to have a, you can just use the ability. You know what I mean? You can just press it. So I don't know. Again, it's just really confusing to me. For as good as Blood DK is, it's like, man, they really just dropped the ball on some of these talents. But I came off Holy Pally, you know? Playing Holy Pally, they have so many good talents, and then Blood's like, yeah. Anyway, so Rune Tap, I don't use it very often, but when I do, I drink Rune Tap. Let's put it that way. It is really, really, really good. I don't always take a damage reduction, but when I do, it's Rune Tap because it is unbelievable. Obviously, a 40% damage reduction. I mean, what's that compared to Icebound? Icebound's only 30. So this is the reason. This spell was the reason Blood DK was overpowered in challenge modes. Blood Tap and Rune Tap equated to massive DPS, massive survival, and the availability of it. There was no rune on in WoD. It was just, you just used it. It just had a CD. So that plus, you know, the absorbs you were doing, there wasn't a big healing model for Blood DK and WoD. It was more about absorbs. So these two things went hugely together. You're basically never taking damage with all of these abilities. Guys, I can't tell you how good this talent is. The problem is it's just, it uses a rune. So you don't want to use it unless you absolutely need to use it. You understand? Using a rune for defense purely is a DPS loss. And a DPS loss is an HPS loss. Do you understand? Because that one rune could have been used on Heartstrike instead. You see? And Heartstrike is going to generate a lot more runic power than just one rune's worth. And a lot more runic power is going to allow you to Death Strike more often. So you only ever want to use this when you cannot heal up the damage immediately. You understand? It's very important. If you're going to trade that runic power, you better be damn sure that that 40% is going to be the reason you survive. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to heal up as quickly. And like the great example here is first boss, Heimdall, or no, not Heimdall. What's the name of him? He was in I don't know. He was in Wrath, but anyway, it's the first boss in Maw of Souls. That boss does a really big. He just hits you with the 1-2 combo. You know, so whoa, you know, just punch right in the face. So if you use Rune Tap, you're gonna survive no matter what. But do you need it to survive? Because that's the question. If you ask me, and you don't need it to survive, never take the spell because that is a DPS loss, like I said, and an HPS loss to use this ability. You could just immediately heal it up. Like when you get hit that hard immediately, you Death Strike immediately after, you're full health. You know what I'm saying? That's 100% heal in at least 2 globals, if not 1. So why would you need to reduce the damage when you can just heal yourself to full afterwards? It's just kind of pointless. You're wasting your own time, you know? And you're losing DPS because of it. So that's the thing. If you're going to die, if you're scared of dying, then you got to take Rune Tap. It's the best talent in the whole tree. But if you're never scared of dying, which you really shouldn't be as a Blood DK, then you don't need it at all. Now, Fall Bulwark, on the other hand, is incredibly good. Very passive, very strong ability. Each charge of Bone Shield increases your maximum health by 2%. And that is, of course, going to add all the way up to 10% when you have 10 stacks. So you're going to always have 10 stacks if you play the game right. You should always have at least more than 5, thanks to Ossuary's potency. But with Dancing Rune Weapon and the haste we have now, plus the 2 set, yeah, you're gonna always have at least 8. I would say, like, it's gonna be rare that you drop below 8 unless you're playing very poorly, which I do all the time. So don't get me wrong, it's not easy to maintain your Bone Shield stacks. You have to do it properly, but if you do it properly, you're gonna have a lot of fucking health. Okay, as you see here, I'm sitting here with 10 million health. Getting an extra 10% onto that just passively while I'm playing the game, on top of all the other health things. It's too good to pass up. It's too good to pass up. So if I have to take Rune Tap, unfortunately, you got to take the Legendary because Rune Tap is good, but you're going to lose 10% of your health too. You know what I mean? That's a lot of health to lose when you have 10 million just sitting here. So you really should use the Ring if you're going to use Rune Tap at all. And then, of course, the 100 tier. This one actually has actual real choices on it. This is the only one I'd say that has real choices on it. You could use all 3 of these for different reasons. So let's go ahead and talk about them. The only talent tree in the entire game that I would say any of these 3 are viable options. Okay, so we'll start with Purgatory. I think it's the worst one in my opinion. A lot of people disagree with me. It does have only a 4-minute CD compared to Vengeance. Demon Hunter has one similar. Theirs puts them into meta, though. So that's actually a DPS increase to be put into meta, whereas Purgatory does not help you DPS-wise at all. So the Vengeance one was very good in the beginning of the expansion. I think it was only 3 minutes, maybe 4, I don't know. But having that was really useful. Because you can intentionally proc it. You'd be like, don't heal me, don't heal me, don't heal me. Proc it, huge DPS increase. Purgatory does not help you with DPS at all. That's the problem. These other two do a good amount of damage, if not a great amount of damage. So having Purgatory is just saying, I'm not worried about maximizing my play in this dungeon. I'm just too scared I'm going to die. And there's reasons to be scared that you're going to die. You are a tank. You understand? So it's not a bad talent. I think it's like, it's beyond, it's really stupid to say, overconfident right here, saying this, embarrassing myself in the future, I'm sure. But saying that you need Purgatory is saying I'm not confident enough playing my Death Knight. That's my opinion. That's the way I feel about it. I'm not confident that I could use my abilities properly to not die. Because as you've seen, I have soloed bosses on Tyrannical 18, 19, 20. You've seen it done on the stream. So what do I need Purgatory for? If I could solo this boss and everybody's alive, when would I ever die? You know what I'm saying? So I don't see why you would ever use the ability. There's going to be times, as you saw when we did that 21 upper Kara, that I was not able to keep myself alive. Because I not only was playing poorly, but I was confused about how I should do it. So, yeah, of course, Purgatory would have saved my life there. But if I did upper Kara 21 10 more times, I would get to a point where I don't need Purgatory anymore. Do you understand? That's the way I look at it. It's like you use this ability when you're not confident that you could keep yourself alive at all times. And Blood Decay, the whole point of them is that you should always never die. You should always be able to keep yourself alive. So anyway, that out of the way, I know a lot of people love Purgatory because it saves their deaths, and they're like, oh, you die, that's it. If the tank dies, the key's over. That's the main criticism of my point. If the tank dies, the key's over. You're right. I understand it. So it's a great talent. It's a very good talent compared to the other two. Very good defense. Better than the other two, probably, defensively, right? But again, if it never procs, you don't have a talent. And that happens to me all the time. So anyway, let's get off that topic. Let's go to Bone Storm next. Now, this is a really interesting talent, and it's really hard to use. But if you can get used to using it, it's the best DPS talent in the entire tree. Whirl of Bone and Gore batters nearby enemies for 1 second, dealing a lot of shadow damage every 1 second, and healing you for 2% of the maximum health every time it deals damage. So, of course, if you're fighting like 5+ mobs, and it's dealing damage every 1 second, and it's healing you for 2% of your max health every second, then you're just going to heal yourself to full over 10 seconds. You understand? 100% of your health is going to be healed over full while fighting 5 mobs. So, it's a lot of damage too, but the reason it's hard to use is because it uses 100 runic power for 10 seconds. So yeah, every time it deals damage, it lasts 1 second per 10 runic power spent. So you don't want to, like, I do this all the time. I accidentally use 99, and it only lasts for 9 seconds. Really annoying, but yeah, this is also great with Ossuary because you can get over 100, so you don't have to actually make that mistake like I make all the time. Helpful. It makes that a lot better. But anyway, the way you got to use Bone Storm, if you're going to get really serious about Bone Storm, you got to build it before the pack. You want to have this on the pull because you're not going to have any death strikes. You understand? So if you're going to go into the pack with 0 runic power and try to use Bone Storm on that pack, you're in trouble. You're in serious trouble because by the time you get to 100 runic power, you're probably going to die. You might actually die without any death strikes for like, what, 5 or 6 globals, depending on what you're doing, maybe 4 or 5 globals. That's not good. Your main healing, your main survival comes from death strikes. So, and then is the pack even going to survive for 10 seconds? After like, what, 10 seconds of building up runic power, is the pack actually going to last for another 10 seconds? I don't know. So you got to use Bone Storm on the onset of the pull. It's not very easy to do. Now, don't forget, I never do this ever, but you can do this. You can get 110 runic power before you even start the dungeon. So if you were doing a dungeon that you actually really cared about completing the timer on, the best thing you can do is pull mobs before you start the dungeon and get 110 runic power. And you can even drop Death and Decay to abate the difference of the out of combat gradual reduction of it. And then you can keep 110 runic power and go right into the pack with 110, the first pack without any problems. The problem with that is, well, there's no problem with that, but the thing that makes me not care about that is Death and Decay plus Dancing Rune Weapon plus Heart Strike means within 1 global I have 100 runic power. So it's usually 2 globals. But anyway, within 2 globals, I have 100 runic power. So You're always going to have Dancing Rune Weapon out in the pool, so you don't actually need to do that. While it would be better to pop Dancing Rune Weapon with 100 runic power, use Bone Storm, then drop all that other stuff to get another 100, there would be a DPS increase, but it's like just kind of stuff that I don't micromanage. So regardless, very strong talent for AoE. Any situation where teaming fortified, take Bone Storm. You'd be a fool not to. I am a fool sometimes, but don't be a fool too. All right, take Bone Storm for teaming and fortified weeks. Either one. I never use it, but now with the 2-set, Morgraine brought it up a couple weeks ago. The 2-set makes Bone Storm a lot easier to use. Because pretty much anytime you have Dancing Rune Weapon, Bone Storm is going to be very easy to use. Like I said, otherwise you got to prepare for the pack ahead of time. That's difficult to do. But with Dancing Rune Weapon, you're going to have it up in 2 globals. Immediately pop it. That's that. GG. Brown bread. The mobs are, as Harry might say. So that's good. But anyway, Blood Mirror is the go-to for me. I really like this talent. It adds another defensive. It's basically a 20% reduction, and it also does damage. If you use it properly, it does a good amount of damage. Like it does about a couple million per application. It's a 2-minute CD, so it's not going to be your top DPS at any point. Better for raids, the damage obviously. But yeah, the one thing I immediately noticed when I started playing my DK was that I felt without Rune Tap that they had a very big hole in their reduction. So with Blood Mirror, I think you're in really good shape. A 20% reduction is really nice. 2-minute CD, pretty applicable. Makes sense, using something like that. It's kind of just like a better Icebound Fortitude if you ask me. So having 2 different reductions, plus Vamp Blood, and AMS, and Consumption, and Death Strike, and Dancing Rune Weapon, it's very complete. Without it, I feel very incomplete. Without Blood Mirror, I never feel as comfortable defensively. And like I said, if you use it right, it's good offense too. So if you're taking Purgatory, you don't have Blood Mirror. So with that alone tells you, like, you had an ability that could have saved you, right? If you use Blood Mirror, you're probably going to be all right. Like, I don't know. I had a weird situation the other day where it seemed like it didn't reduce the damage, but typically a 20% reduction when you have 15 million health is usually enough to survive. And it's rarely that you're going to take more than 10 million health and damage. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's pretty good. It's a really good talent, and I would recommend using it on any week that is not fortified or teaming, okay? And then if you're really struggling, take Purgatory, or if you're doing like 24 or something like that, you're probably going to die if you make a single mistake, because that's the difference, right? I do like a 20. I make a mistake, it's like, oh shit, got a Death Strike. But if you do it on a 22, oh, I'm dead. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. So I can understand. All 3 of these are very good. But anyway, that's my take on talents. Longer than I expected, to be honest. A lot of these talents really suck, guys. I'm telling you. Once again, if you're just doing 5 minutes, just copy this, and you'll be happy. You'll be very happy. There's almost no choice in the first 4, especially, and really 5 out of the 8. There's really no challenge. So anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in the next one.